The sharp scent of pine needles and damp earth flooded my senses as I tore through the forest barefoot, breath ragged, heart thundering against my ribs. The night air bit at my skin, cool, unforgiving, hinting at the coming fall, much like the pack I was frantically trying to escape. My pale, tangled hair, catching branches and debris, lashed across my face as I pushed myself harder than any Omega was supposed to survive. But I'd never fit their definition of ordinary, no matter how hard the world insisted I should. Tonight was the harvest moon ceremony. By now, the entire Silvercrest pack had gathered in their sacred clearing, cloaked in deep blue and silver torches, casting flickering halos over their judgmental faces. And by now they would have realized I was missing. Not because I mattered, but because my absence disrupted their perfect little hierarchy. I'd gone 3 seasons without finding a mate. I was Ariax, the letdown, the whispered joke, the cautionary tale pack mothers used to scare their daughters straight. An Omega too pitiful to draw even a beta's eye, much less an alpha's, they'd say, in the kitchens, assuming I couldn't hear the contempt dripping from their voices. Maybe something was broken inside me. Maybe my wolf refusing to respond to the puffed-up, hollow-chested males of our pack meant there was a flaw in my blood. Or maybe, like Malin whispered before she died, I was waiting for something bigger, something they could never understand. My fingers brushed the small vial hanging from a leather cord around my neck. Inside, a single bead of shimmering silver liquid caught what little moonlight filtered through the branches. Malin had called it moon tears, gathered beneath a blood moon when she was younger than I am now. When the world abandons you, this will lead you to where you belong, she'd said, as her final words, placing it into my palm. I'd hidden it ever since my rebellious little secret. Tonight it felt warm against my skin, pulsing faintly, as I ran deeper into a territory our pack avoided. A chorus of howls rose behind me, shattering the quiet. They'd found my trail, not because they cared, but crossing borders without sanction, violated old treaties, and doing it on a harvest moon skirted dangerously close to provoking war. They'd come to protect diplomacy, not me. North of us lay the Blood Moon Pack, quiet feared, wrapped in superstition. Their Alpha King was rumored to be more monster than man, ruling through raw strength instead of council meetings. They attended no festivals, no shared rituals, no mating gatherings. Some claimed they wielded ancient blood magic. Others whispered no she-wolf had survived the Alpha King's claiming. I'd always chalked it up to scare stories for pups. But when the trees thinned and I approached the border river, its waters stained red from iron-rich soil, a strange tug pulled at my chest, like invisible threads guiding me forward. Behind me the howls got closer. I could distinguish individual voices, now the sharp, commanding cry of Thorn Silvercrest's lead enforcer and the synchronized howls of his hunting party. They were gaining on me. With a final burst, I plunged into the river. The icy water stabbed up my legs, soaking my plain gray Omega dress, functional, shapeless, forgettable. The current tugged at my calves as I slogged toward the center. That's when it hit a pressure shift in the air, sharp enough to pop my ears. My wolf, silent for years, suddenly stirred alert. Danger, she whispered, not behind us. Ahead. I froze midstream, water swirling around my thighs as I looked toward the opposite bank. At first there was only darkness and ancient pines. Then the darkness moved. 3 pairs of glowing eyes surfaced amber, calculating inhuman. Wolves larger than any I'd ever seen. Shoulders broad as boulders. Fur so black it swallowed the moonlight. Blood moon sentries. Terror should have rooted me in place. But instead my wolf surged to the surface with such force I stumbled to my knees in the freezing current. One wolf stepped closer, looming at the river's edge. Unlike the others, his eyes weren't amber. They were a cutting, gleaming silver that pinned me in place. He didn't growl, didn't sound an alarm. He just watched me as if peeling back every layer of who I was. Behind me, branches snapped as the Silvercrest hunters reached the river. Ariax Thorn's voice cracked like a whip. "Get back here now, and maybe your punishment will be merciful." But there was no mercy waiting for me back there, and we both knew it. Humiliation exile to the Omega quarters at the edge of Packland, or worse, being handed off like a bargaining token to some desperate allied pack willing to accept a broken Omega. That was the future waiting for me if I turned back. I stared at the massive dark wolf with the silver eyes burning through the shadows. He didn't advance or retreat, didn't signal aggression or mercy, yet something deep inside me knew that stepping onto his land would rewrite my life in a way I could never undo. Warmth pulsed from Malin's vial against my chest. Her last whisper echoing inside me, "When all else collapses, this will show you the path." I inhaled shakily and turned my back on everything I'd ever known. Each step forward felt like a vow, each splash against my legs like a line being crossed. Water climbed to my waist before slowly lowering again as I neared the Blood Moon shore. The 3 sentries, Rix Ozak and Fenric, watched me with a silence so heavy it felt alive. Somewhere behind me, Thorn shouted, but the roar in my ears swallowed his voice just as my feet landed on Blood Moon soil. A sudden surge of energy shot from the ground through my bones, an electric jolt that made my wolf rise in a way she never had for Silvercrest. She wasn't timid anymore. She felt fierce, untamed. The silver-eyed wolf finally moved, closing the distance until his heat rolled over my chilled skin. Up close I could see every scar carved into his muzzle and chest, stories, etched into flesh, victories, survival command. He dipped his head, not in surrender, but in sharp appraisal, holding my gaze with unnerving intensity. "Please," I breathed, before I even understood what I meant. Sanctuary, mercy, or maybe just an end that didn't involve crawling back to shame. A deep growl rumbled from his chest, but it wasn't aimed at me. His gaze flicked past my shoulder toward Thorn and the Grey Claws debating whether they dared follow me across the boundary. Then without warning, the wolf turned and strode toward the tree line. After a few steps, he looked back, eyes glowing like forged silver. "Follow." I cast one final glance behind me. Thorn stood frozen at the river's edge, fury twisting his features. The other Grey Claws shifted uneasily, clearly unwilling to chase me into Blood Moon territory. "You're throwing your life away," Ariax Thorn yelled. "They'll rip you apart before sunrise." Maybe he was right. Maybe stepping forward meant choosing a different kind of death. But as I turned and followed the silver-eyed wolf, Zevran, into the dark unknown, something sparked inside me, a faint rebellious flicker of hope I hadn't felt in years. The forest deepened around us, ancient trees rising like pillars, their branches knitted together, so thickly the moonlight had to fight to get through. The earth beneath my feet shifted from soft moss to sharp stone that bit at my soles. But I didn't stop. Zevran moved with a predator's silent grace, glancing back occasionally as if making sure I hadn't fallen behind. The other 2 sentries, Ozak and Fenric, shadowed us on either side, their massive forms gliding between trees with uncanny quiet. Their curiosity pressed against me like a physical thing. An Omega alone crossing enemy borders, willingly unheard of. We climbed upward for what felt like hours. My legs burned, my wet dress clung uncomfortably to my skin, and fatigue pulled at my bones. Still, I didn't complain. My wolf stayed sharp alert to every shift, every scent, every whisper of wind. At last the woods thinned enough for me to glimpse stone ahead, carved directly into the mountainside. Not the wooden cabins of Silvercrest, but a fortress born from rock itself. Torches lined the massive entrance flames, writhing in the night breeze and casting eerie shadows across the ground. Figures stood, guard wolves in human form, dressed in dark leather, etched with symbols I didn't recognize. They straightened as soon as they saw Zevran. The silver-eyed wolf halted at the clearing's edge. The air shimmered around him, the unmistakable distortion of a shift beginning. I looked away out of instinctive respect. When I raised my eyes again, a man stood where the enormous wolf had been. Tall, imposing, carved from shadows and firelight. The same silver eyes locked onto mine. His dark hair brushed his shoulders, scars crisscrossing his chest like a map of battles survived. Tattoos, ancient intricate, shifted over his skin in the flickering light. "You've crossed into Blood Moon territory, Omega," he said. Voice rough, low-edged with authority that vibrated in my bones. Why direct? Blunt. Completely unlike the veiled posturing of Silvercrest. I couldn't stay. The words scraped out of me, smaller than I wanted. Not anymore. His eyes narrowed. Running from something. Or toward something. The vial at my throat warmed again, as if answering for me. Both, I think. He studied me in silence, his expression a wall I couldn't read. Then, without offering a hint of what he intended, he simply turned and walked toward the gates. The sentries who had escorted us, now in their human forms, motioned for me to follow. As we passed beneath the towering stone arch, I felt dozens of stares latch onto me. Some curious, some sharp with suspicion, all watching. The fortress opened into a wide courtyard where pack members moved through their nightly routines until they noticed me. Then everything slowed, attention snapping toward our small procession. Unlike Silvercrest, where Omegas were expected to drop their gaze and shrink themselves small, I found myself unable to look away. Blood Moon wolves didn't dress according to rigid ranks, no color-coded uniforms. Their clothes were rugged, marked with furs, feathers, and charms that clicked softly as they moved, whispering like old spirits. Many of them wore tattoos similar to the ones on the silver-eyed man, though less elaborate, less commanding. We crossed the courtyard and slipped into the mountain through another set of heavy doors, carved with scenes of wolves chasing prey beneath a swollen full moon. Inside, the air was warmer, the stone halls lit with torches trapped in iron sconces. We descended deeper, turning again and again until direction became meaningless. Finally, we stopped before a reinforced metal door. The silver-eyed man pressed his palm to it. A faint glow flared beneath his fingers before the door swung open soundlessly. "Wait here," he ordered, gesturing for me to step inside. The room was sparse, a bed, draped in furs, a wooden table with a single chair, a small fire smoldering in the hearth. I couldn't tell if it was meant to hold me or shelter me. "The Alpha King will decide your fate," he said as I entered. "Until then, you do not leave this room." As the door closed, I spun around quickly. "Wait, who are you?" He paused, those silver eyes taking one last measure of me. "Corvin," he said. "First guardian to the Alpha King." The door shut with a heavy thud. A lock clicked into place. Left alone, my legs finally gave way. I sank to the floor, pressing my back against the cold door. What had I done? I'd run from one cage straight into another. Yet my wolf, normally timid and wary, felt strangely steady, at ease. The vial against my chest had cooled again. I drew it out, lifting it toward the firelight. The lone droplet of silver swirled, shifting like it breathed, forming shapes that vanished before I could understand them. "Where have you taken me, Malin?" I whispered into the empty room. "And what happens now?" Sleep came in restless fragments, dreams bleeding into shadows until the sound of a turning lock jolted me awake. My wolf stirred, not fearful, just alert as the door opened. A woman stepped inside. Tall, lean, with auburn hair braided tight against her skull. Unlike Silvercrest females in their soft dresses, she wore fitted leather pants and a sleeveless tunic, arms toned and strong. But it was her eyes, amber streaked with gold, that held me still, cool and assessing. "You're awake?" she said, placing folded clothes and a wooden tray of food on the table. "Good. You'll need your strength." I stood slowly, painfully aware of my soaked, tangled appearance dress clinging to me, hair in knots, bare feet, scraped raw. "Who are you?" I asked, voice rough. "A Sarah," she replied. Blood healer. Second to the Alpha King. She motioned to the food. Eat, then wash up. The king expects you at sundown. My stomach tightened with a mix of hunger and dread. What does he want with me? A flicker crossed her otherwise blank face, curiosity or warning, I couldn't tell. That's for him to say. But I'd advise you not to show up unprepared. She crossed to a section of the wall, placed her palm against the stone, and it slid open, revealing a small bathing chamber with a steaming stone tub. You have 1 hour, she instructed. At the doorway, she paused. The clothes are for you. The old ones will be burned. Before I could respond, she left. The lock clicked again. The food was simple warm bread, smoked meat, tart berries, but I devoured it, realizing how hollow my stomach had been. The bathwater smelled of pine and something sharper, a herb that seeped into my muscles as I slipped into the heat. I scrubbed away dirt fear and the forest memory, wondering what kind of alpha waited for me now. In Silvercrest, our alpha only visited Omega quarters out of obligation, wearing a look that said he wished he didn't have to see us at all. We were considered necessary, but never valuable. The clothes Asera had left behind were nothing like the shapeless Omega garments I was used to. The leather pants were soft and, well worn, dyed a deep midnight blue that reminded me of clear winter skies. The top was simple but finely stitched tiny silver beads, tracing the neckline like scattered stars. There was even a pair of soft boots that fit as if they'd been made for me. As I pulled everything on, I noticed a faint silvery imprint on my skin where Malin's vial had rested through the night. I brushed my fingers over it, unsure if it was a trick of light or something more. Then I tucked the vial securely beneath the new clothes. Almost exactly 1 hour after Asera had disappeared, the lock clicked again. This time Corvin filled the doorway, tall and imposing. He wore a black tunic open at the collar, revealing more of those strange tattoos curling across his skin. Runes intertwined with stylized wolves. His silver eyes flicked over my appearance, widening, barely a fraction before he masked the reaction. "Follow me," he said. "And remember, speak only when spoken to. Keep your gaze lowered. Tell the truth. Your scent will betray anything else." It was standard protocol for an Omega meeting an Alpha, but the tone in his voice made it clear that here the consequences would be far worse. I nodded and he led me out into the corridor. We took a different route than the night before, climbing upward through the mountain fortress. The halls widened with each turned stone walls now draped with tapestries, showing wolves running beneath different moon phases. Every pack member we passed bowed their head to Corvin, then let their gaze linger on me. Curiosity plain on their faces. At last, we stopped before massive double doors carved from nearly black wood. 2 guards straightened as Corvin approached. He looked back at me, voice low. "Remember what I said, and no matter what happens, do not show fear." With that ominous warning, he pushed the doors open. The chamber beyond was enormous. The ceiling vanished into darkness overhead, torches burning along the walls, but most of the light poured through a circular opening high above a beam of fading day, cutting straight down onto a raised dais. At its center stood a throne woven from ancient gnarled tree roots, polished to a glossy black. And upon it sat the Alpha King. Even-seated Zevran commanded the room. He was larger than Corvin, broad shoulders pressing against the seams of a simple black tunic. His hair was dark as midnight and tied back sharply from a face carved in stark, unforgiving lines. But it was his eyes that held me, neither silver nor amber, but a burning red that smoldered like embers. I quickly lowered my gaze, just as Corvin had instructed, but not before Zevran caught my scent, his nostrils flaring subtly. So his voice rumbled deeper and heavier than Corvin's, charged with power that made my wolf whimper inside me. "This is the Omega who dared cross my borders." My pulse surged, but I kept my head bowed. "Look at me." The command hit like a shock. It went against everything I'd been taught, but my body obeyed before my mind could protest. His red eyes locked onto mine, and a strange pressure curled in my chest, as if invisible fingers were reaching inside me. "What is your name?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "Ariax," I answered, surprised my voice didn't crack. "And why Ariax of Silver Crest? Did you trespass into Blood Moon territory on the sacred night of the harvest moon?" The truth spilled from my mouth before I could attempt anything diplomatic. I was running. I couldn't face another harvest moon full of pity and rejection. A ripple of murmurs circled the chamber, and I realized we weren't alone. Members of the Nightborn stood around the room, quietly observing. Zevran's expression didn't change. "You expect me to believe an Omega abandoned her pack's protection to cross into land she's been raised to fear? Because of embarrassment." When he said it that way, it sounded reckless, even insane. But there had been more. It wasn't just that I managed forcing myself to hold his gaze, though every instinct begged me to look away. It was something else, a pull, like something calling me here. His eyes tightened, and he rose in one smooth, predatory motion. I forced myself not to step back as he descended the dais, and circled me, his presence radiating heat, far stronger than any werewolf should possess. "What feeling?" he demanded. "Explain." I struggled to put it into words, threads tugging me forward, drawing me toward the river, toward him, toward this fate I hadn't chosen, but somehow recognized all the same. Like something was pulling me toward answers I'd never find in Silvercrest, I finally said. I hesitated, then added, "Malin gave me something before she died. She said it would lead me when the moment came." Zevran stopped pacing and stepped directly in front of me. "Show me." My hands shook as I reached beneath my collar and drew out the vial. The silver droplet inside reacted instantly in Zevran's presence, swirling faster, glowing faintly, as though aware of him. The Alpha King's reaction was immediate and startling. He hissed, actually recoiling a step, his red eyes flaring brighter. Around the chamber, members of the Nightborn gasped and murmured. "Where did you get this?" he demanded, his voice scraping low with something close to alarm. "My grandmother," I said. "She gathered it under a blood moon when she was young. She called it moon tears." Zevran's gaze flicked sharply toward Corvin, some silent exchange passing between them before returning to me. His expression shifted from controlled scrutiny to something fierce intense. "Your scent," he said, stepping closer again. "It isn't like any Omega I've ever met. Sweeter, layered, and beneath it power." Corvin finished quietly from behind me, disbelief threading his voice. Zevran nodded slowly, eyes locked on mine. A silver crest. Omega, carrying moon tears arriving on a harvest moon. His lips curled in what might have been a smile, though nothing about it was warm. The old prophecies stir. The word prophecies shot through me, but years of Omega conditioning kept me silent under his authority. "You will remain here," he announced, returning to the throne with a final decisive stride. "Not as a prisoner, but not yet as pack." His voice echoed through the chamber. "You'll be given quarters in the East Wing. You will remain under guard. You will not shift, and you will not attempt any contact beyond these borders. Each evening, you will present yourself to me at this hour." I stood frozen, unsure how to take any of this. "And one more thing," he added, leaning forward, the red in his eyes deepening. "Tomorrow begins the blood moon cycle. For 3 nights you will take part in our most sacred rite." His voice dropped to something darker. "You will taste my blood, Omega, and we will discover what truth Malin's vial holds." A stunned intake of breath swept through the Nightborn. Even Corvin stiffened beside me. "Do you accept these terms?" Zevran asked, though it wasn't a question. Refusal wasn't an option. My wolf surged up with unexpected strength, stealing my breath. My vision blurred, then snapped into focus as words spilled out of me, unbidden. "I accept, Alpha King." Zevran's smile widened, canines lengthening just slightly. "Not human at all. Good. Corvin will escort you to your quarters. Rest well, Ariax of Silvercrest. Silver. Tomorrow begins the real path you were meant for. As Corvin guided me from the room, I felt the burn of the night-born stairs on my back. Curiosity, fear, suspicion, all tangled together. Whatever I'd stepped into was far bigger than fleeing my past. The vial under my clothes warmed, pulsing like a heartbeat. My new quarters were nothing like the bare cell I'd first been placed in. Corvin called this side of the stronghold the East Wing, once reserved for foreign dignitaries, before relations between packs had fractured. A sprawling chamber spread before me, a large bed draped in furs, shelves carved into the stone walls, a bathing room, a window overlooking endless forest. Corvin's voice remained carefully even as he explained. Many of these books belonged to former allies. Before things went bad, I traced my fingers along dusty leather spines, the titles so faded they were nearly gone. When did that happen? I asked. Before my time, he said, offering nothing. A guard will stand outside your door. If you need anything, ask them. I turned toward him. So, am I a guest or a prisoner? His silver eyes met mine, held, then slid away. That depends on what tomorrow reveals. With that, he left the door, closing softly behind him. No lock clicked this time, though. I doubted I had real freedom. I spent the afternoon exploring the room, paging through ancient texts. Histories of packs, moon cycles, magic older than the first shifting stories. Silvercrest had taught Omegas only the bare minimum. Chores, basic healing, raising pups. These books spoke of far more rituals, bloodlines, prophecies. As the sun slipped lower, shadows stretching across the stone floor, a knock sounded at the door, announcing food. The woman who entered wasn't a Sarah, but someone younger, with bright green eyes and a tentative smile. I'm Sirai, she said, setting down a tray overflowing with far more food than I could possibly finish alone. Kitchen assistant, and I've been assigned to help prepare you for tomorrow. Her scent marked her as a beta, but she didn't carry the entitled sharpness Silvercrest betas so often directed at Omegas. Instead, she seemed almost uneasy around me. Prepare! How I asked, hunger stirring despite my nerves. Sarai looked toward the doorway, checking that no one else lingered there. The blood moon ritual is sacred, she whispered. Only members of the Nightborn usually take part, an outsider being included. She shook her head, awe flickering across her face. It hasn't happened in generations. I tore a piece of bread, chewing slowly. What exactly happens in this ritual? Her eyes widened. I'm not allowed to know everything. I'm too low rank to participate. She fussed unnecessarily with the tray aligning the dishes. But I do know there's blood sharing between the Alpha and the Chosen Wolves. It's said to bind the pack and awaken dormant abilities. The bread turned dry in my mouth. And Zevran wants me to take part to drink his blood. Sarai nodded, her expression torn between fascination and worry. That's why I'm here. To explain the purification process you have to go through beforehand. She outlined it carefully. Fasting at midnight, a sunrise bath infused with special herbs and ceremonial clothing that would arrive in the morning. Throughout it all, her gaze kept drifting to where Malin's vial rested beneath my shirt. Is something wrong? I asked finally. Color rose in her cheeks. It's just... There are rumors spreading about that vial, about what it might mean. What kind of rumors? She hesitated, then whispered. There's an old prophecy. But before she could finish, footsteps echoed outside. I need to go, she said quickly. I'll return at dawn. She slipped out just as Asera entered, carrying a small wooden box. I see Sarai explained what tomorrow requires, Asera said, eyeing the abundant food. Eat well. The ritual demands strength. What is this prophecy everyone keeps hinting at? I asked, tired of half answers and cryptic warnings. Asera studied me for a long beat. Prophecies are dangerous to toss around lightly, she said. They tend to twist themselves to our expectations instead of revealing truth. She set the wooden box on the table. These will help you prepare. Inside were several small vials. The red one before sleep, the green one at sunrise. They looked medicinal, nothing like Malin's vial. Will they hurt me? Asera actually looked startled. You crossed enemy borders alone, offered yourself to one of the most feared alphas, alive, and agreed to a blood ritual almost no outsider has ever witnessed, she said dryly. And you're worried about my tonics? When she put it like that, I couldn't help a shaky laugh. Some tension broke, even if only for a moment. A faint smile ghosted across her lips. The red one ensures deep sleep. The green one purifies your body before the ritual. Nothing more. Thank you, I murmured, closing the box. She turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. Ariax, she said without looking back. Whatever happens tomorrow night, remember this, in blood magic, intention matters. Your purpose, your desire, your will, they shape the outcome. Then she was gone. Despite the tonic, sleep came in jagged pieces. My dreams were filled with rivers of living silver and wolves with burning red eyes. I woke to a soft knock as dawn's first pale glow crept into the room. Sarai entered with 2 other young women, each carrying supplies, steaming pitchers of water, bundles of herbs, and a garment wrapped in protective cloth. They filled the stone bath, releasing the scents of lavender sage and something sharper I couldn't name. The purification bath lasts until the water cools, Syria instructed, arranging the ceremonial garment on my bed. Submerge yourself completely, 7 times. With each immersion, focus on releasing anything that ties you to your former pack. A chill crawled down my spine at her words. Release my ties, you mean? Sever my pack bonds? The 3 women traded looks. You crossed the border by choice, one of them said softly. Your connection to Silvercrest is already fading. This just finalizes it. The weight of that truth hit harder than I expected. I had hated so much of my old life, yet the idea of fully severing myself from it forever struck something deep. But what waited for me back in Silvercrest? More pity, more isolation, a life half-lived. I drank Asera's green tonic and stepped into the bath once they were gone. The water was hot without being harsh, the herbs releasing richer scents as I slid beneath the surface. 7 times I submerged fully, and with each dip something loosened inside me. Not a snap, but an opening like doors unlatched one by one. By the time I finished, my skin was flushed and tingling, my head light and strange as though the world had shifted around me. The ceremonial garment resting on my bed stole my breath. A deep crimson dress flowed like liquid fire when I lifted it, soft as silk, cool to the touch. Silver designs spiraled along the neckline and sleeves, echoing the runes I'd seen etched across Corvin's skin. And it fit perfectly. Too perfectly. Sarai returned as I secured Malin's vial around my neck, the one piece of my past I refused to relinquish. Her eyes widened. You look... She shook her head at a loss. The Alpha King requests your presence for the day meal. Corvin is waiting to escort you. I hadn't expected to be seen again until the ritual. The day meal with everyone, Sarai nodded solemnly. The entire Nightborn will attend. Sharing food is part of preparing for the blood ritual. My heart squeezed tight, but I followed her to the door. Corvin stood waiting, clad in formal black with thin silver threads woven through light, catching on the fabric with every movement. His silver eyes flickered, widening briefly at the sight of me. Then his face smoothed back to neutrality. You completed the purification, he asked. I nodded, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt. Good. Come. We walked through corridors that grew wider and more elaborate, stone walls giving way to polished wood and tapestries depicting scenes under shifting moons. Pack members halted as we passed, staring openly. Some bowed not to Corvin, but to me. Why are they doing that? I whispered. Corvin's jaw tightened. Word of the prophecy spread despite orders. They're showing respect for what you might represent. And what is that? I pressed. He glanced sideways, his expression unreadable. That's what tonight will reveal. We reached double doors, inlaid with silver. Guards pushed them open, revealing a high-ceilinged hall with a long table stretching through the center. A dozen people were already seated. Their voices died instantly when we entered. Zevran rose at the head of the table, the others standing in unison. His formal attire mirrored Corvin's black with silver accents, but on him, the effect was devastating. The silver made the red of his eyes burn brighter, emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, the power coiled beneath his skin. "Ariax of Silver Crest," he said, voice carrying effortlessly. "Join us." To my shock, he gestured to the seat at his right, the place of highest honor. Corvin pulled the chair out for me before taking his own across from mine. Farther down the table, I saw Sarah watching, her amber gaze intense. The rest were unknown to me, the Nightborn all dressed in black and silver. Only I wore crimson. I looked like a drop of blood among shadows. Before anyone touched the food, Zevran spoke, addressing the table, though his eyes stayed locked on me. "Before we begin, I want it understood that this day marks a turning point. For 3 generations we have awaited the rise of the blood prophecy. Tonight we find out whether our waiting finally ends." Soft murmurs rippled down the long table, every gaze flicking between Zevran and me. He lifted a goblet filled with dark red wine, or what I suspected wasn't entirely wine. Until then, he continued, voice carrying with effortless authority, "We welcome Ariax to our circle as an honored guest. May the moon guide our purpose and blood reveal our destiny." The Nightborn raised their goblets as one, repeating in unified voices, "May the moon guide our purpose and blood reveal our destiny." Servants began setting heavy platters before us, meats glazed with herbs, roasted roots, fruits I didn't recognize. As everyone settled, Zevran leaned toward me, his breath warm against my ear. "Tonight," he said quietly, "everything changes for both of us." The shiver that ran through me wasn't entirely fear. The meal blurred by in cautious questions and sideways glances. The Nightborn asked about Silvercrest, about Malin, about the old ways she practiced. I answered honestly, though it became clear they already suspected more than they let on. Zevran, his name whispered to me through the meal, said little. But I felt his stare like heat on my skin, burning and unrelenting. Occasionally he exchanged looks with Corvin or Sarah, silent messages passing between them, heavy with meaning I didn't understand. When the meal ended, Zevran addressed me directly. "Rest," he ordered, rising to his full height. "The ritual begins when the moon crests the mountain. Corvin will escort you to your quarters and return when it is time." As we walked back through the labyrinth of corridors, I finally asked the question that had been gnawing at me since the first whisper. "What is this blood prophecy? If I'm expected to be part of it tonight, shouldn't I know what it means?" Corvin checked the hallway before answering. "The prophecy tells of a moment when the Alpha King's strength will be met not by an enemy, but by his perfect counterpart." His voice dropped lower. "It speaks of one who carries moon tears, one whose wolf appears weak but hides ancient power, one who will drink the king's blood and—" He stopped abruptly, and what I pressed heart-pounding. He met my gaze, silver eyes stark and troubled. "And causes his wolf to bow." I stopped walking. "Bow." "As in submit, no alpha wolf submits," Corvin said, tension sharpening his tone. "And Zevran's least of all. His lineage goes back to the firstborn wolves. His blood is the purest alpha line alive. So they think the prophecy can't be literal. Many think it's symbolic," he admitted. "Balance instead of dominance. That the Alpha King's line has grown too powerful, too disconnected from the moon, and that it needs—" He hesitated. "Temperance." We reached my door. Corvin paused, troubled shadows crossing his face. "Whatever happens tonight, Ariax, remember this prophecies change depending on who fulfills them. Your choices matter." Asera had said something similar. My chest tightened. Why tell me this? I asked softly. A heavy look settled over him. Because I've served Zevran for more than a century. I've watched his power grow and his control slip. His wolf has begun to rule the man instead of walking beside him. He glanced down the corridor. Some of us hope the prophecy brings balance, not just for him, but for all of us. Before I could respond, he opened the door. Rest. Prepare. Tonight we'll ask more from you than you know. Hours dragged by painfully slow. I tried to sleep, but my mind spun with fragments of warnings and ancient magic. Instead, I combed through the old books lining my shelves. Legends of blood rites, mentions of moon tears, cryptic notes about dormant lineages awakening. None of it told me what I desperately needed to know. As the sky darkened, Sarai returned with a light meal, the final one before the ritual, and a small wooden chest. For your hair, she explained, opening it to reveal silver combs and pins. Tradition dictates participants wear their hair up. So the neck is exposed. The implication chilled me. Sarai worked quickly. Her fingers were skilled, weaving my pale hair into an intricate style that bared my neck completely, save for Malin's vial resting against my skin. There she said, stepping back. Perfect. As she collected her things, I reached out and caught her hand. Sarai, if the prophecy is true, what happens to me? Her eyes widened, softening with sympathy. I don't know, she whispered, but I've seen the way Zevran looks at you, and it's not how predators look at prey. Not comforting, not entirely terrifying either. Just unknown. Corvin arrived just as the first stars sharpened against the deepening sky. He too had transformed. His formal clothing was gone, replaced by ritual garb, black leather pants, and an open vest that revealed the full spread of his runes. Under the torchlight, the silver markings looked alive, shifting like smoke under his skin. It's time, he said simply. We descended farther into the mountain than I had ever been, walking through tunnels that felt older than any pack history I'd read. Carved stone gave way to raw cave walls. The air warmed steadily, touched by the sharp mineral bite of earth. And the metallic tang I recognized instantly. Blood. We entered a vast circular chamber carved from the mountain's heart. High above, a natural opening let in the darkening sky. The rising full moon would soon shine directly onto the polished stone dais at the center. The Nightborn stood around it in full ritual garb, dark leather, bare skin, swirling tattoos. Asera was among them, her expression grave. And on the dais stood Zevran. My breath stalled. He looked nothing like the controlled alpha I'd seen at the meal. Humanity clung to him only by threads. The ritual pants barely contained his massive form. Muscles rippled beneath skin marked with ancient scars. His long black hair fell wild around his shoulders, and his eyes, those red burning eyes, glowed like embers thrown into a storm. His teeth were longer, sharper. His fingers ended in claws halfway between man and beast. Not fully wolf, not fully human, something more. Corvin led me to the edge of the circle. Remove your shoes, he murmured. Your feet must touch the earth. I slipped off the soft slippers, the cool stone shocking against my bare skin. Corvin guided me to the open space facing Zevran. Asera approached carrying a silver bowl filled with a clear, herb-scented liquid. She dipped her fingers, touched a symbol onto my forehead, then gestured for me to step inside the circle. The moment I crossed the boundary, the air thickened, like an unseen membrane, sealed me into another world. The Nightborn began chanting low and rhythmic in an ancient tongue that vibrated through my bones. My wolf woke, fully pacing just beneath my skin. Zevran watched my every step with those glowing eyes, and for the first time I saw something in them I didn't expect. Fear. Not of me, never that, but of the moment itself. Ariax of Silver Crest, he said, voice deeper, rougher, layered, with power that rattled in my chest. You stand at the threshold of knowing. Are you prepared to receive the blood knowledge? Corvin had taught me the response earlier. I stand ready to receive what is freely given. Zevran extended his clawed hand. Kneel before the Alpha of Blood Moon. My training as an Omega made the movement effortless, but my wolf didn't lower her head in submission. She rose alert and steady, humming with an emotion I couldn't name. Zevran's shadow swallowed the moonlight above as he loomed over me. With a single claw he drew a symbol in the air, a complex, ancient glyph. The very air shimmered around it as though the mark held weight. Blood reveals truth, he intoned. Blood awakens power. Blood binds what is meant to be bound. The chanting swelled. Zevran lifted his wrist to his mouth. Without hesitation, his elongated canines tore into his own flesh. Dark blood welled up thick, shimmering, almost black. Drink, he commanded, lowering his wrist to my lips. I hesitated. Warnings about blood magic, fear of consequences. Silvercrest conditioning flashed through my mind. Then I felt Malin's vial, warm against my skin, pulsing like a heartbeat. Her voice echoed in memory. This will guide you to where you belong. Meeting Zevran's blazing eyes, I wrapped my hands around his wrist and pressed my lips to the wound. His blood hit my tongue, electric burning alive. A shock of raw power surged down my throat, setting my veins ablaze as though molten silver poured through them. I tried instinctively to pull away, but Zevran's other hand slid to the back of my head, holding me firmly in place. Drink! He growled the word, vibrating through my bones. I swallowed and fire detonated through my veins. My eyes squeezed shut as visions snapped across my mind like lightning forests I had never walked. Ancient battles soaked in blood. Faces of Alpha Kings long dead, all bearing Zevran's features. Generations of memory and entire lineage poured into me. And then, cutting through the storm, one image blazed with unnatural clarity. A woman with pale hair like mine, standing beneath a blood-red sky, cupping her hands as silver droplets rained from the moon itself. Malin! The vial at my throat burned, then seared so violently, I tore myself free of Zevran's hold, gasping. My hand flew to the vial just as it slipped free of my dress hanging exposed. The silver liquid inside no longer swirled. It glowed, pulsed alive with moonlight. Zevran's eyes locked onto it, widening in sharp recognition, then hunger. The tears, he whispered. After all this time, he reached for the vial. The moment his fingers brushed it, a blinding flare of silver exploded between us. Zevran roared, stumbling backward as though struck. The Nightborn cried out, wavering, their chanting fracturing into chaos. And inside me, my wolf surged. She didn't rise timidly or with fear. She rose like something ancient, powerful, awakened. My whole body convulsed as the force rushed upward, scorching through every nerve. My bones ached with the desperate urge to shift. My skin rippled as if something beneath was trying to break free. No, Corvin shouted. It's too soon. The first blood exchange must complete before. His voice cut off as I looked up. My vision had sharpened into something beyond human. Zevran had regained his footing, staring at me with a mix of fury and awe. His wolf had risen dangerously close to the surface, his features morphing by the second. What are you? He demanded, the words barely human. The vial pulsed against my skin, silver light spreading in thin tendrils along my arms and throat like living metal. Where it touched my skin absorbed it, my veins lighting up like channels of molten moonlight. I started. But the moon reached its peak overhead. Moonlight crashed through the skylight in a perfect column around us. Zevran threw back his head and roared, half agony, half triumph. His body warped violently as his wolf seized control bones, cracking and reforming. The Nightborn retreated. Some cried warnings, others dropped to their knees. And through it all, My wolf rose higher, clearer, stronger no longer. A creature shaped by rejection, but something whole. "It is time," she whispered. "We are one." As Zevran's monstrous wolf form took shape, massive black as shadow, alive with power, I felt the last of the vial's light fuse into my skin. The glass shattered into dust, scattering across the dais like silver sand. "Blood reveals truth." I said the words rising from a place beyond thought. The Alpha King shall meet his match not through battle, but through balance. Zevran's wolf stood before me, now colossal, terrifying eyes burning with feral red fire. He growled a warning, a threat, a challenge. Any Omega would have collapsed to their knees. But the silver light in my veins whispered stand. And I did. I rose slowly, the moon's glow flickering beneath my skin, answering Zevran's power, not with defiance, but with equal force. "I see you, Alpha King," I said softly. "Do you see me?" The giant wolf prowled toward me, muscles rippling beneath black fur. Every instinct I'd ever been taught screamed at me to lower my gaze, to bare my throat, to yield. But I didn't. My wolf didn't. We stood together, steady, grounded, unshaken. Zevran circled me, a dark hurricane of fur and heat. His presence pressed against me like gravity itself. I felt his strength, his dominance, his age, yet for the first time I felt something else woven through it. Recognition. "She should be dead," someone whispered from the edges of the circle. "No Omega survives contact with his wolf during the ritual." But I wasn't dying. I was blazing. The silver light carved shifting patterns beneath my skin. Ancient runes I understood without learning, as if they had always been waiting. Zevran completed a full circle around me, then stopped. His massive head lowered until his muzzle hovered just above my hand. Slow, intentional, deliberate. A gesture no alpha wolf should offer. Not submission, but acknowledgement. An echo of the prophecy neither of us could ignore. His breath fanned hot across my skin, and though those massive jaws could have ended me in a heartbeat, instinct told me he couldn't harm me now. I lifted my hand, silver light pulsing brightest at my fingertips, and pressed my palm gently to the space between his eyes. The moment we touched, a shock tore through both of us. Sharp, ancient, undeniable. A connection snapped into place, something older than pack law, older than bloodlines, older than the mountains surrounding us. Images flooded my mind again, but these weren't memories. They were crossroads, possible futures, branching endlessly, overlapping destinies, glowing in threads of moonlit silver. And through all of it, a voice whispered with the familiar cadence of Malin. The Alpha King's power runs unbalanced when left unchecked. The Omega line carries the old magic, the moon's voice forgotten by the Alpha strain. Together, they restore harmony. Zevran's massive wolf trembled under my touch. His red eyes locked with mine, not in a clash of dominance, but in something far deeper. Recognition. Completion. Then impossibly the black wolf lowered himself. Front legs outstretched. Head dipping forward. Not full submission, but an unmistakable bow. A gesture given only to one whose authority is acknowledged in sacred matters. The prophecy thundered through my mind until his wolf bowed to her power. Gasps erupted around the chamber. Corvin stepped forward, awe brightening his silver eyes. "The prophecy," he breathed. "It's happening." Zevran's body rippled, bones shifting back. Fur-receded limbs reformed, and within seconds he knelt before me in human form, head still lowered. When he finally lifted his gaze, the fury in his red eyes had been replaced by something startling wonder. "Moon-blessed," he said, voice reverberating off the stone walls. "After centuries, you've returned." I didn't know the meaning of the title, but my wolf did. It resonated through our shared consciousness, right and true. "What does that mean?" I asked. Zevran rose, towering once more, But the energy around him had shifted, no dominance, only respect. "It means balance has been restored," he said. "The alpha strain grew stronger through force, but weaker in moon sense. We lost our connection to the true magic. The omega strain was believed to have faded, until your grandmother preserved it with the tears." "My grandmother," I whispered, breath catching. "She was blood moon, wasn't she?" Corvin nodded. "She was the last moon-blessed born here. When she failed to produce an alpha heir, she was exiled, sent to Silver Crest as a show of peace. The elders believed her bloodline weakened beyond use." His gaze softened, but she knew otherwise. Asera stepped closer, her amber eyes shining. She gathered the moon tears at her final ritual, knowing they would safeguard the magic until someone worthy came along. "She protected your lineage and delivered you here through that vial." Malin's stories, her quiet certainty, her cryptic warnings, all of it settled into place like the final pieces of a long-hidden puzzle. The silver glow across my skin faded slowly, sinking deeper inside me until only a faint luminescence shimmered beneath the surface moonlight through water. But the power remained, clear, steady, awake. Zevran extended his hand, not commanding but offering. "There is much for you to learn, Ariax, about your heritage, about the role of the moon-blessed. Will you stay?" My thoughts flashed back to Silvercrest, a place of whispers and pity and walls that never welcomed me. There was nothing left for me there. But here were answers, purpose, a power that felt right. "I'll stay," I said, placing my hand in his. His skin burned hot against mine, alpha fire touching moon-blessed magic. "But I won't be caged or controlled. This power is mine to shape." A rare smile softened his mouth, genuine warmth replacing the predator's grin I had grown used to. "Moon-blessed have never been creatures of chains," he said. "Balance demands you walk your own path. I lead through strength. You guide through wisdom. One cannot exist without the other." The Nightborn began to withdraw, the ritual complete in a way none of them had expected. Corvin remained studying me with newfound respect. "The pack will need time," he warned. "Some won't accept an Omega wielding this kind of power." Zevran's tone sharpened final. "They'll learn. We've waited generations for balance. I will not allow fear or tradition to undermine what's been restored." Asera approached with a silver cloak draping it over my shoulders. Its weight grounded me warm and protective. "Come," she said softly. "You need food and rest. The first awakening takes a toll on the body." Asera's voice was steady as she led me from the ritual chamber. I glanced back over my shoulder. Zevran stood where I had left him, watching me with those burning red eyes, still fierce but now layered with something new. Consideration, possibility. The days that followed blurred into a storm of learning. Each morning, Asera guided me through the history of the moon-blessed Omega wolves, born with a rare link to lunar magic, the ones meant to temper and balance the volatile strength of alpha bloodlines. "My grandmother was the last moon-blessed, wasn't she?" I asked. Asera nodded as we pored over ancient parchments in her healing chamber. Her power faded because the former Alpha King Zevran's father refused balance. He wanted dominance, not harmony. When she bore only daughters with beta mates, he declared the line useless and exiled her to Silvercrest. I whispered almost to myself. But she took the moon tears with her. "Yes," Asera said softly. "She preserved the magic for you. Afternoons belonged to Corvin. He taught me blood moon politics and the role I was expected to inhabit. You're not an alpha," he reminded me. "You don't command through force. You lead through clarity, through knowing. Your connection to the moons will gives you sight the Alpha King doesn't have. You complete him." Evenings were Zevran's. He found me in the gardens night after night, usually at moonrise. At first our conversations were strained, centuries of Alpha-Omega hierarchy standing between us. But slowly that barrier cracked. I saw the man beneath the king, the wolf beneath the monster, the one who had carried the pack alone for over 100 years, the one who listened to my strange insights even when they challenged him. We disagreed, often his fire against my calm, but the friction always led to solutions neither of us could see alone. The pack watched us with mixed reactions. Some of the elders raised on prophecy welcomed me. Younger alphas, the ones taught that omegas were beneath consideration, took longer to accept it. But as the silver magic inside me grew stronger, even the skeptics began to notice the shift in their king. Less volatile, more measured. Still powerful, but with a steadiness he'd never shown before. 3 months after my arrival, under another bright full moon, I stood alone in the gardens as lunar light bathed the peaks around us. My pale hair, now streaked with silver since the awakening, lifted in the cold breeze. I felt Zevran approach before he made a sound. My senses had sharpened in ways I still didn't fully understand. "Ariax," he said, stepping beside me. In the moonlight, his red eyes glowed less like embers and more like reflections on dark water. "The council has approved the new treaty with Silvercrest." I nodded, pride warming my chest. One of my first acts as Moonblessed had been to propose rewriting the treaties with neighboring packs, starting with the one that cast me aside. Omegas would no longer be traded as bargaining chips or penned into servitude. The new terms recognized potential in wolves of every rank. Thorn nearly choked when he realized he was negotiating with the failed Omega. "He once dragged through a forest," I said, unable to hide the satisfaction in my voice. Zevran's mouth curved into one of the rare smiles that softened all his rough edges. Those smiles had become more frequent lately. "He looked ready to challenge me the moment you walked into the council chamber," Zevran said. "Especially when you sat at my right hand." "He's predictable," I replied, "but he's not arrogant enough to risk a war with Blood Moon." Silence settled between us, not uncomfortable, just waited. "You've reshaped this pack in 3 months, Zevran said finally. "There's a balance here now, something I didn't realize we'd lost." I blinked, surprised by the honesty in his voice. "The balance was always possible," I said, softly. "It just needed the right pieces." "Yes," he murmured, stepping closer. "Balance." There was something in his tone that pulled me to face him fully. The terrifying Alpha King from my first night was still there, but now I also saw the man beside him. Not quite a friend, not an enemy, something more foundational, a counterpart, a tether, the missing half of a story neither of us knew we'd been living. "I've been thinking about the prophecy," he said quietly. The line, "until his wolf bowed to her power." I always assumed it meant submission, and I fought it because what Alpha bows, it wasn't submission. I said the truth arriving without effort. It was recognition. His jaw flexed. "Yes." Then hesitantly, so unlike the king he was, his hand lifted. Soft fingers brushed a loose, silver-streaked strand from my cheek. His touch scorched, but not painfully. More like a spark catching tinder, more like a beginning. Recognition settled it between us, of what had been missing, of what finally made sense. His touch sent a warm ripple through me, not the searing heat of the ritual, but something steadier, grounding. My wolf no longer a shadow curled in fear, but a constant alert presence, stirred with interest, with approval. The blood ritual was only the beginning. Zevran said, his voice low-threaded, with something I'd never heard from him before. "The prophecy's true balance comes when Alpha and Omega forge a bond that cannot be undone, when fire and moonlight merge into something neither can achieve alone." I understood exactly what he was implying. Not a treaty, not an alliance based on duty, not even a partnership of convenience. Something deeper, permanent, intimate. "Are you asking because the prophecy demands it?" I said quietly. "Or because you choose it?" His red eyes held mine. For once, they weren't blazing with power. They were open, unguarded, painfully honest. 3 months ago, he admitted, I would have said prophecy. He exhaled, slow and raw. But now I can't picture leading this pack, living my life without you beside me. Is that choice enough? The silver light beneath my skin pulsed softly in response, reflecting the truth I felt down to my bones. It's a start, I said, lifting my hand to his face. His skin burned warm beneath my moon-cool fingers. A very good start. Under the full moon, the same moon that watched me flee through the forest months ago. Zevran Alpha, King of Blood Moon, bowed his head toward mine, and I, Ariax, once. The rejected Omega, now moon-blessed, rose to meet him halfway, neither yielding, neither overpowering, both choosing balance at last.